Wow, you guys are getting here early now. Just almost let it run just to see who would show up and start talking before I even went live. So, what's up, Nick? What's up, Julius? I got one more in the house, but they ain't talking. So, anyway, you guys know me as Mikey Wine. Gundam Morning Works. This is part 11 of the M61A5 135th scale Bandai main battle tank from Gundam. And I got most of, actually, I would say all of the kind of chipping and grime and stuff done. And now I'm going to move on to the pigment stage. So tonight we're going to be doing pigments, dry pigments, how to apply them, how to fix them with a pigment fixer, and how that works. So that's what we're going to be doing. So we go down to, what's up, George? George just dropped in. Giovanni just dropped in. How's everybody doing? Thanks for joining in, guys. We're going to be doing some dry pigments tonight. And I'm going to show how that works and how there's several, or actually a couple different methods on how to apply that stuff. With or without fixer, you don't necessarily need it, but it does help hold it in place. But the cool part about this stuff is that it's an enamel fluid. You can put your pigment on first, then put the fixer on. When that dries, you can go back over it with some dry pigment if you wanted to add a little bit more of a natural dusty type effect to it. So I got some soot on the bench here because I was actually doing these. Looks a little bit darker on camera, but I was doing these exhaust vents here with some soot, so that you can see that on there. We'll go down a little closer here and we'll talk about the pigments first. But so I got these side skirts are not attached yet. They're just sitting on there because obviously I got to put the tracks and the wheels on. But I am going to do for ease of demonstrating these, I'm going to take the turret off and we'll do the top of the main body of the tank tonight. So, but anyway, you can see the streaking there, some of the rust, some of the chipping. I've also done the turret as well. Obviously, there's not as much chipping. We're trying to keep this as real as possible. So as further you go up off the ground, the less likely there will be some kind of a rock chip or something like that. So there is a couple little chips here and there on the turret, but not very much, mostly just streaking and grime. And there's also a little bit back here where the exhaust vents are, the exhaust nozzles. There's some soot on the little fenders back there. So I will be adding quite a bit of dirt underneath to where the tracks and the wheels are, but tonight will primarily be just top of the body. If we get further than that, we'll keep going, but I'm going to take the turret off here just for the time being. Rotate that 90 degrees. That falls off, and I'll plop this right over here out of the way on top of my keyboard. So anyway, so I've got several types of pigment. Now, the stuff that I'll be using is just going to be from AIM products tonight. Let me take the sides off here too. This will be a lot easier to do without these falling off every 2 minutes. Okay. Take this, the mousy mouse, go out of the way. Okay. So this is from AIM products, and it's listed as like a intense powder. It's very, very fine powder in different colors. This is my go-to, which is a medium earth for doing any kind of dusting. I've got a dusty brown, which is actually, no, I'm sorry, this is my go-to. This is the dusty brown. The medium earth is a little bit darker than that. You can see slightly different two colors. Hey, what's up, Angel? Angel finally made it in the chat. And then I've got a soot black here as well. But I do have some other colors that I won't necessarily be using. And I've got even a darker earth. This is dark earth, which has a lot more black in it. It's a little more gray. And then we've got a grimy black, which is close to the soot, just not quite as dark, stark black. If I took the two blacks and compared them side by side here, you see this is the soot. It's a little bit darker. And then this grimy black has maybe more of oil stain type color to it. So I may use the two brown colors there, but I primarily probably stick with just the dusty brown to start, and I can add a little bit of highlights with the darker color. Now, what I was talking about earlier is the pigment fixer. An AK, this is AK pigment fixer. It's a clear enamel fluid. It dries flat, which is really helpful, so you don't have to necessarily go over it with a clear coat unless you really want to seal everything after that, but you shouldn't really have to. The fixer will keep everything in place once you apply the fixture. So the way they tell you on the bottle is basically to apply the fixer, or actually apply your pigment first, then take some fixer with a round brush. I've got two brushes here that I use. This blue one is what I apply the pigment with, and I've got this kind of fat round tip brush that I'll apply the fixer with. And then you can move it around while that's still drying. Move your pigment around and then leave it sit, and it will dry in place. Then, if you wanted to, you can actually go back over it with more of the powder and further get more of a dusty type effect. So, without further ado, let's get started. I've got some other AK products as well as far as pigments. I've got a smoke pigment here. This is dark steel, which is kind of interesting. It's a metallic color, so it's really kind of cool for, I mean, very, very certain, minimal. I don't know if there's minimal applications for it, but for like gun barrels or something like that, where you want to have a little bit of color to them, you can do that. I've got a little white spirit here, which is more of a thinner. Can also be used for cleaning brushes. Then I've got another black pigment here from AK. I also have white, and this is called white ash, which is really nice if you're trying to create like one of the city diorama, the first city diorama I did. In fact, the one I entered in GBWC, I wanted the Zaku that got shot through the chest. I wanted it to look like it burned from the inside out, like a tank. When tanks catch fire from the inside out, they leave a lot of white ash, behind. And so it's a really nice pigment. It's very, very bright white, and it works good as like an ash. And then I got some burnt umber here, and this is burnt red, rusty red. So quite a few different types there, but I'm just working with the dirty colors today, so for dust and grime, stuff like that. So let's get started here. First, need to wet my palette a little bit. All right, so be very, very careful with this stuff. I'm going to get in close here. You see how fine this is? I mean, it is extremely fine. Trying to just tap it down, you can see it kind of moving around. It doesn't take a lot. A little goes a long, long way here. So if you knock it over, you're going to make a mess. And then one of the things you saw me doing earlier was kind of just wiping up the bench. This stuff gets everywhere. It's hard. You try your best to keep it in close, but it will get everywhere. Whatever dust flies off the brush, whatever you sweep around or whatever, you'll have to periodically take like a wet cloth and go over your bench and just wipe all this powder off. Otherwise, you end up with it all over you and all over your parts. So what I'm doing is I'm just barely touching the tip of the brush. Okay, so you see it's a little bit of that pigment is collected on the end of the brush. And I'm just going to go in and start plopping it down in some of these corners where you get dirt accumulation. Collecting dust and stuff will collect in the corners, areas that aren't being touched by, hands or feet. And just real simple. I mean, right away you see what it does with that little tiny bit of pigment there. And when I'm going to add the fixer later, we'll see what that looks like. It does tend to darken it up a little bit with the fixer, because it's kind of like applying water to dirt. It's gonna get a little, clumpy. It's gonna clump together a little. Excuse me, a little bit more, and then. But the nice part about it is once you start putting the fixture down, you can move that pigment around a little bit more. Okay, I'm just going to do this little section first, just to kind of show what this will look like. So I'm going to open this bottle of fixture. I kind of consolidated most of this into another bottle because I had 2 open bottles of the stuff. So, and all I'm really doing is just touching this brush in there. It's not going to take much. It just kind of, it'll basically wick right into that brush right away. And I'm just going to touch the end of the brush on top of where the pigment is. Okay. So now I've got the fixer on there. I can go ahead and kind of move this into the corners a little more, and it's kind of like using an oil. You can move it around to get it where you want it. You can even clean areas off a little bit if you got too much in one area, you can use the brush because it's wet to kind of pull that pigment and move it around to where you want it. I just want these corners where there would be an accumulation of dust and stuff like that that's going to collect in one area. All right, now each time I get done with that, I'm just going to put the lid back on. So now you can see it actually makes it look even better with the fixer on there. So I'm going to let that dry for a minute. I'm going to keep moving on to the next spot, and then we can do more and more areas all at once. But just for the sake of showing everybody kind of how this works, I just did that one little section. So I guess talk amongst yourselves. I'm kidding. Now try to keep this brush dry. I know there's some of that fixer worked its way underneath this little bracket here. So that's okay. I just don't want to get this saturated too wet, because then it'll just be pulling too much of that out of the jar here when I looking good. Thanks, George. Can we talk about you? Oh, you can talk about me all you want. I don't care. I'm sure it's all true. And by putting this on dry like this, it's just basically going to coat the surface a little bit with dust. There will be some heavier areas where this stuff kind of clumps together. But as you just I'm almost jabbing at it with the tip of the brush. That's why I kind of like this brush. It's not very big, but it's the bristles on it are stiff enough that I can kind of control where I want the heavier areas to collect. And if it seems like it's too big a pile of this stuff, once you put the fixer down, it will kind of settle everything down. Giovanni, let's see. Giovanni's got something. Put this on screen so everybody can see here. I gave up on a Zaku flipper. What was I working on? I lost one of the power cables from the waist, cleaning my work area, and found it across the room. Well, at least you found it, because one of the things you would only say kind and thoughtful things or truthful things about me. Well, I'm going to put that on screen so everybody can see that, and everybody's my witness here. It's not just me making up words. Going back to Giovanni's point here, at least you found it. I put wood floors in thinking it would be easier to find lost parts. And in fact, well, that is very true. However, I found out that if you have a gap between the baseboard and the actual wood floors that you put in, because carpet was obviously thicker than the new floors I put down. So there was a gap there, and I immediately had a part fly off, slide underneath that gap, and disappear into Narnia. So I learned a lesson there. It's like not always better to have wood floors. All right, so I'm trying to deal with glare here too, because my overhead lighting. I apologize. I'm going to tilt this just slightly. I got to see where I'm putting this pigment. The shine of it was of the fixer was kind of getting glaring in my eyes. I couldn't see it. So, all right. So now I can kind of collect all this in one area. All right. So this is going to further make it look grimy and dirty, which is exactly what we want. You guys can probably hear the high school football game going on out my window. It's that time of year. All right. Now, even as I'm just taking the excess fixer out of the brush, but you can see how some of that pigment has come with it, which is okay. That's fine. It's nice to know that you can at least take that stuff. If you do have too much pigment there, you can take it off with the fixer just by collecting it in the brush as you move it around. Okay, so far this hasn't dried yet, and now we're starting to get that really dirty effect. And as it dries, I said we can even go back over it with dry pigment afterward and then add even more effect to it. So let's just keep moving along. Mike smells like elderberries. As an elder, as an old man, like elder. So I smell like elderberries, huh? And Giovanni says, now, as of today, I have 2 projects going on at the same time. Well, that's good. I try to stay on one, but very rarely do I pick up a second project. I either put it down altogether or I finish it, but that's just me. Zaku Flipper and the HG Cathedral. Okay, cool. I mean, I can't say I don't start something different. There's been times where I've been doing this live stream, and I'll have maybe a project is all in paint. There's really nothing I can do on camera with it, so I'll snap together or start something else in that respect. But typically, I try to work on one at a time and finish it. But I have on occasion put something back, and like the Elan Cassatria, I started that one time, but I had just finished a huge project, and I wasn't in the mood for dealing with all the issues that the Elan Cassatria had at the time. So I ended up putting that back in the box for a few months. But the only other project that I can think of recently was that crappy kit from Max Factory. Don't tell all you old guys. All you old guys smell like elderberries. I don't know, Julius. Them's fighting words. I don't know. Do we smell like elderberries? I don't know, Angel. Do we smell like elderberries? Angel's older than I am. Mr. Crazy Hog. Does he smell? Do we smell like elderberries? I don't know. Maybe I should ask my wife. I'm trying to save as much of this fixer as possible. I don't want to have my brush, have to dry it out every time and just waste a bunch of it. So I'll try to get most of it back in the jar. So just adding a little bit to those areas there. It does look quite a bit richer on the camera. In person, it's not as bright. It is dusty and dirty. And as this starts to dry a little bit, I can, there's less and less of the fixer, so I can go back through and clean up, maybe almost dust off those areas. I just want to basically put it around where the accumulation areas were. That's where I'm trying to get some of this dust. Not the entire thing will be covered, but just areas that would collect dirt over time. Always good to see here and type. What was that? Always good to see here, read, type from you, George. Okay. Not sure what that means. Does an angel look younger than you? Well, maybe, but that's just because he uses just for men. I let my gray come out. I don't care about it. I'm kidding. If I gave away your secret angel, I'm sorry. I got another area right on top here. That's pretty good. Each time I'm getting some of this on the brush, I'm really just barely tapping the tip of the brush into the pigment, because it's very, very, it does, it's described as intense powder, and it is. It's really, really potent stuff, so you don't need, otherwise you just end up wasting a bunch as it flies all over the place. Let's see here. To be young and not smell. Well, at least you don't think you do. Your parents were nice enough to keep that little secret from you. Because believe me, you probably did, especially as a teenager. All right, let's keep the lid on this. Less chance of me actually knocking that over. At least the pigment, if I do knock it over, it won't be quite as bad. I did put a little bit of fixer down on this, and just that's allowing this to stick. So now I'm going to go back through and touch up that area that I just put down. It's another method. You can put a little bit of the fixer down and then just kind of tap some of the pigment onto the top, right on top of it. But I really just wanted to, I'm just going to go back and clean this up just to leave a little bit of that behind. Most of this probably won't be seen under the turret necessarily, but this will collect a little bit of dirt. It's one of the other things I did too, was under the turret, you can see like this area right here, there's a lot of oil stain or soot there, just to kind of give that effect, because as you get this giant bearing basically that this whole turret turns on, so there's going to be some grease and some stuff that's going to come out over time, and that's why I wanted that area to be a little bit darker, so when you put the turret on, you kind of see that from the side. So let's see. We're throwing. Hey, what's up, Rory Holler? How you doing? Turtle RC Race. I think we've seen you before, right? I recognize the name, I believe. Looking great. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And we're slinging insults here. So Nick says, you have very young children. You smell. It's just a different kind of smell. Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that one. And in case Rory's wondering what's going on, I asked everybody to talk among themselves. So they started talking about old men and me being old, and it just went on from there. Just degraded from there. Went downhill. It's all good. All right, so this is starting to get a little bit drier. And again, it dries flat, which is really nice. But I can go through and put a little bit of this pigment on afterward just to kind of dusty it up a little bit if you so choose to at that point. You don't have to do that. If I smell like anything, it's mild hint of coffee and sleep deprived. Well, that's what happens when you have kids. At least brand new ones anyway. You get sleep deprived. All right, I need a little bit of fixer here. This area on top of this panel got a little bit too saturated. So I'm just going to use the fixer to kind of wash that out a little bit. Just keeping the dirt and dust around to the edges of it. There, that's better. Like I said earlier, it's kind of like an oil. If you're using enamel thinner on oils, if you use more thinner, you can thin it out however you need to kind of blend it, blend whatever oil you're using. But it also helps, if you need to wash off an area, if you got too oversaturated an area, you can do that. So I'm going to move on to this other lower area here. Exactly. Yeah, we all agree with that one. Sleep deprived. We're all a little bit sleep deprived. Especially if you're still working. Unlike Angel, who's been retired for over a year now. And my wife has essentially been retired for over a year now because she stopped working a long time ago, but officially retired this year or late last year. I can't remember when she started. It was actually last year, but this is what makes for a great live stream. Good convo and model making. Yeah, that is true, George. That is true. You kind of set the precedent for that years ago when you started yours on Instagram as a means to connect with people because of COVID, kind of isolated everybody. And so, yeah, it started out as an experiment, I think, and then it kind of flourished into something quite good. All right, so just to show you the difference here. So you can see this side here has had the fixer applied to it, and then this is just dry pigment. So it's actually quite a bit lighter in color, but there's more of it. So what I'm going to do now is go back like I was doing before. I'm going to take the fixer brush and just move this around, get it tucked into those corners and those areas that or, I mean, you could just blow this off if you wanted to. Whatever dust will stick to your flat surface, especially a surface that's rough. Like this has some of those non-slip panels, so it's a little bit more textured. You could blow it off and leave just whatever dust color sticks, but the fixer will help make everything stay where you want it to. Tell your wife I'm extremely jealous. Whose wife? My wife? Oh, because she's retired. Yeah. I know you're getting there, dude. You're almost there. I know you want to. It was one of those things I had to work it out in my head. Yeah, I know where you're at, George, because you're pretty close. And I know you're looking forward to that. I think everybody's a little bit jealous when they first, somebody in their family gets to retire. I mean, it took me a little bit of time to adjust too, because I was kind of used to or working, and of course, financially things change a little bit. Everything's not we're not income isn't the same, so you got to think about that. It's not. It's like, yeah, I want to retire, but then you also got to think about, well, still got to buy groceries. Still got to. Okay, I got a little too much fixer here, so take some out of the brush, and now I can go back and essentially dust off some of these areas and just keep what I want in the corners. I know I'm sounding like a broken record. I keep talking about the same point, but I'm just trying to give you guys a thorough understanding of how this stuff reacts and how it works. And if it's not wet enough, you just start spreading it around like so. But this way, I put a little bit extra down, and then take a drier brush. Use my towel to kind of take some of that fixer out, so I can collect more of it. I want to lift some of it off and leave the rest in those corners. All right, that's looking pretty good. It does take some time for the stuff to dry, so. That's okay. It gives you a chance to go back if you need to rework some of it. You can always do that. Let's see. Nah, I just talk and sometimes do okay with the model. I learn from the best. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got a lot of good friends in the model industry, or this hobby. We've all learned something from somebody. Amazing builders out there. Learned a lot from Angel, how to airbrush and stuff. I've only been airbrushing since 2013. No, 2012. So 2012, 2013, something like that. I think that's when I started airbrushing. It was after I went to SCGMC for the first time, and it was their second year of doing that show. And if anybody's ever been to their show, they typically, I don't know if they did the last couple of years, but they always had like an airbrush demo for they'd bring their own airbrush stations and have about 10 of them set up, and if anybody wanted to pick up an airbrush for the first time, good. And that was my first time picking up an airbrush, and I was sold after that. And then the following year at SCGMC, I ended up winning the expert category with the Candy Red Sotheby 1.0, the resin dress-up conversion kit. So that was the rest is history, I guess. Interesting, the size of the brush you're using. I'd have thought a smaller one would be better. Are you talking about for applying the pigment, or applying the fixer, or both? Because this isn't that big. This is it's S85. I don't know what that equates to. It's number 4 brush, so it's a decent size, but it's about, I don't know, a little over maybe 3/8. It's a little over 1/2 inch long as far as the bristles, but the diameter is maybe 1/8 of an inch. But it's nice because it collects a decent amount of pigment in the end, and then I can just move it around. It's just it makes it easier once. And then with the fixer, I use a slightly larger rounded end brush just so it will wick out and hold on to some of that fixer. So then I can use that as more of just a wet brush to move everything around. The fixer. Oh, right. So you're talking about the fixer brush. Yeah, it is slightly larger, but you could use a smaller one. There's no wrong way about that. I mean, it doesn't necessarily matter that much. This is a large enough model with enough room that I can get away with, using it. But I like it because if I need to take some of that pigment out, if I've got too much there and it's moving around, I can get the brush wet enough and put enough of the fixer down, then dry the brush. So now it's more like a sponge, and it will pull some of that liquid out along with the fixer. Just the way I learned how to use it. There's probably no one way to do this, just like anything else. There's always more than one way to accomplish the same result. And I basically just dip in the tip. I go down in there with the brush, and I wait till I see the fixer move. Knowing that I've dipped the tip of the brush, and then it's enough in there. I don't even have to go down that far. It's going to soak up enough of that. See, once it gets wet, it actually the size of the brush diminishes slightly. I'm not planning on retiring, but if my trucking business takes off, I'm just going to manage it. Well, that would be awesome. That'd be great. Good luck for you. Good luck to that. I mean, that would be awesome. All right. So I'm going to move this stuff around a little bit. Some of these corners here, this area. Now that I've got everything kind of damp, I can go back and just start moving it around until I get my desired effect. And we know that, guys that operate a tank, they don't take care of their equipment at all. It just gets dirty and grimy and nasty. So I got to put those cables on too, because I also have to dust up those cables, the tow cables. Right now they're just airbrushed black, but the pigment will definitely soak into the fabric, the fibers of those cables, because they're like a string material. Once I put the cables on, I'm going to do the pigment in these areas first, and then I'll secure the cables, and then I can go back over it. I just want to try to work around them while I'm trying to do this with the brush. I have 4 trucks just sitting collecting dust. Damn. Need to hire some operators, huh? Hey, but at least you got 4 trucks. Yeah, you gotta start somewhere. I don't have any trucks. So again, I'm just applying pigment to the crevices and areas that would collect dust, dirt. What I might do, if I do go back over this with another dry pigment after the fixture dries, I might actually use the darker of the two. It's almost I mean, especially on camera, it almost looks like a rusty, not so much dirty, but in person, it's a little bit easier to see in person. But I want it to be a dirtier, a dirty effect. This is what I used on the Abrams, but the Abrams was painted in a desert scheme, so the colors were a little bit more matching. This is a little bit starker contrast. But I've already put so much down now, I'm not going to go ahead and try to change it. What I'll do is I'll just highlight those areas later. Maybe with the darker pigment, we'll see. All right, I'm going to add a little bit of some fixers, some of these areas, and start moving this stuff around a little bit. I'm just going to get back in. I'm actually, you know what I'm going to do? Let's set this aside. I'm going to do this tops of these first. Just going to go around the edges. Okay. Set that aside. I'm going to start over here and work my way back. I should have put some there too. Do that before I get any fixer down there. All right. I think going back to George's point about the size of the fixer brush, I think this size works only because, well, maybe better because it does hold quite a bit of fluid. I think with a smaller brush, you may not be able to get the amount of fixer you want down in the right place. And it allows me to go back and make adjustments to the fixer that's there, or the pigment. But yeah, it also allows, I guess in a way it does allow to take some of that fixer away if I do have too much, but it gives me enough working time. If it's too little fixer, I might end up, it might get too dry too quickly. I want to be able to really work these areas while it's still wet, and then And if I do need more, just give it a little dip. This is enamel fluid, so it's not like lighter fluid or anything like that, or it's not gonna damage. At least it shouldn't. I haven't had any experience with it damaging plastic like Panaline thinners do, or Panaline accent colors like Tamiya stuff that on bare plastic you can have issues of breaking and making the plastic brittle. I haven't experienced that using this enamel fluid or the fixer anyway. So because I do have some cracks here where I just noticed like some of the fixer just going right into inside. I can't really do anything about it. It's just going through a crack, and I'm hoping that, like I said, I haven't had any issues with it, but I don't think that it causes any problems if you do get a little bit behind an area where it has time to just sit there. I need to clean this off. So I get too much. I only want it to stick to the areas, the crevices and stuff, not just completely wash out an entire section. So, let's see. Giovanni says, I just started working on the Zaku flipper because I started watching George's Instagram stream. Well, I'm sure a lot of people started a certain project based on what they saw someone else doing. That's pretty cool. Sometimes that's what it takes to get a little inspiration. Inspiration from somebody else. And in fact, on Macross World forums, I just saw somebody had beat me to it and recreated the hallway scene with Max and Miriam fighting. A little bit different idea than what I was thinking of, but same concept. They have Miria up on the ceiling. Max is turned around, and they're fighting, shooting each other. You see all the blast marks on the walls and stuff like that. Pretty cool idea. It's like 3/4 of the hallway just kind of opened on one side. Really cool idea. Right, that looks pretty good because there's a lot of good surface area right here where a lot of collection would be, grime and stuff. So I like that. It looks really, really, really like the way this looks in person. I'm going to go over a little bit here on top, not very much, but there are some areas, like crevices and stuff, that will take a little bit of that pigment. So we'll do that next. But first, all this talking has got my throat dry. Oops. Oh, let's switch that out. Put that over there. All right. Let's do this fender. I'm just going to not do the whole surface, just grabbing areas that are slightly raised where around these hinges and latches might be a little bit of dirt. Anywhere dust and dirt will collect, It's up to your own imagination as how much you want to add. right, that looks pretty good. Go up this side here because there's a nice little crease there where I actually collect. All right, let's move on to the fixer. Is the Zaku flipper? Is that exactly what the name says? Is it like an aquatic type kit? I mean, I don't know much about it, so that's why I'm asking. Hear the coaches yelling at the players on the football game that's going on. It's pretty good. I'll still have to do the side skirts as well because there are some areas that are exposed, like across the back here, so there will be some discoloration there as well, but for the time being. This aside. So anyway, how's everybody's day going so far on this hump day? Wednesday afternoon here in, well, for me anyway, in the Pacific Northwest. For those that just might have joined in recently, I'm just doing dry pigments here with pigment fixer, and then I can go back over once that dries and here on there and reapply some dry pigment if necessary after that. But for now, we're just putting it on, letting the fixer dry. Switching back and forth between the dry brush and the wet brush. Wife and I binge watch Andor. It's not even over yet. How can you binge watch the whole thing, or did you just get caught up? Is that what you mean? Because I'm halfway through episode 9. Which is because they've been releasing it in 3 episode blocks, but the finale is next week all by itself. So yeah, I like I said, I got halfway through. It finally started getting really interesting. I mean, it seemed like there was a ton of character development. It just took forever to get to where we're at now. But let me have your thoughts on that, Julius, because if you were feeling the same way, because it seemed like the first episode was pretty exciting. There was some good action. I don't want to spoil anything if anybody hasn't seen it yet, but Then it seemed like it kind of dragged on a little bit because of all the character development and all the basically the politics of it of what's going on and why things are happening, and then it's finally starting to get really good. Took a little bit to get off the ground, but it's good now. All right, I need to put a little bit of pigment right on the top of this little side area here. Do the other side as well. All right. Although I will say it's probably the best way to do it. I mean, there's a guy I work with too who loves that series, loved the first season of it. Obviously, if anybody doesn't know, this is like the prequel to Star Wars Rogue One. So there's not going to be a season 3. It's like you only go so far before you're caught up to where Rogue One was. But the best way to do it might be to binge the entire thing. I did think it was kind of interesting that they decided to release 3 episodes at a time each week. Not sure what the thought process was behind that, but maybe it's a scheduling thing. I don't know, but still didn't mind it. I enjoyed being able to watch more than one episode at a time. All right. So we're almost, try not to knock this over. Get there. Now I got a bunch of wet pigment fixer that I got to let dry. Julia says, yeah, after episode 1 and 2, I figured it was building a cinematic end. Yeah, or climactic end. Yeah. Certainly is, because like I said, it definitely took time after that to kind of get going. It's mostly just, all the senators scheming, trying to figure out what's going on. But it does give you a taste of just how cruel the Empire is, and this, especially in episode 9. It's like, damn, they really don't care about anybody. But like I said, I'm only halfway through that episode. I'm gonna finish it tomorrow morning while I'm sitting there waiting for work to start. So I do leave early enough to get ahead of some traffic and stuff, so I end up with a little bit of time in the morning. Sit in my car and watch whatever. Sometimes it's listening to George, but most of the time when I do that, it's on the way in. It's not after I get there. It's usually about the time I get to work as his live stream is finishing up. So sometimes it's that, but most of the time it's, at least right now, I've been watching a lot of Walking Dead, because I never did watch that series when it was new, not realizing that there are 17 seasons to get through. So I think I'm on 7 right now. So I've been turning that off, on Tuesday or Wednesdays when I have to get through a few episodes of Andor. $7:00. So we got about 30 more minutes. Hopefully you're not too bored by now. Need to add a little more of the just straight fixer. I got quite a bit of pigment here that needs to be, some of it needs to be moved around and some of it needs to be lifted off. So I'm just going to kind of wet these areas so then I can go back through with a dryer brush now that there's a fixer there. A little more. I have to get more of this fixer though. I only got one bottle left. Don't use it very often, but when I do this kind of armor, it's usually when I use the dry pigments quite a bit. But it's really a nice thing to have if you're doing this kind of work. All right. So we'll go across these here, a little bit right there. Actually, might add just a tiny bit across this edge on both sides. All right. Speaking of Star Wars, Giovanni says, after I am done with the SD Mazinger, Millennium Falcon in the queue. Which one? A 144 scale, or are we going big with the perfect grade? Which one are we doing? There's actually several 144 scale ones out there. So is it the Force Awakens version? Is it the Lando version, which I actually did as a commission a few years back? It came out very, very well. That was a fun kit. I bought some hallways and stuff on Shapeways. 3D printed like hallways for the Millennium Falcon, the Lando version. It was actually kind of nice because you could see inside. There's a few doors, excuse me, that you can open and look inside, like where that one game table was, and the seating area. Then you got these hallways coming off, going to the cockpit and things like that, but you can't really see down the hallway. So it just kind of went around the corner, but it was kind of cool to add those 3D printed hallways so that what you could see, what little you could see in there was kind of cool. I'm curious to know which one you're going to build. All right, so this is almost really done here for as far as the top. I still got the turret to do. There's quite a bit there. And then the side pieces, I might actually grab the side skirts here and just do those real quick because there's only a little bit of exposed area that will have a little bit of a collection, and then there's a couple of steps that might have some dirt in them. Yeah. Quite a bit of extra weathering feel. I still have not secured and glued down the exhaust hatches. I was leaving that to the last minute because I wanted to make sure, in case I had to remove them to do anything special, I didn't want to have run into an issue where I've got them glued and secured in place, and I've got no way to get some weathering in there, some dirt, whatever. All right, so next up, I'm going to grab one of these. Just going to kind of move all this back just a little bit so I can get to this, bring it more into the camera. So this whole edge here is covered up by the fender. So there's really not a lot there, just a little bit maybe on the steps here, these open steps. There's a couple of steps back here. And then this surface here, those are the only ones that will have a little bit of this pigment, so it's not going to take much. 144 Rise of Skywalker. Okay. So let me ask you, is that the one that's gone back to the round radar dish, or was that still the square one? I can't remember. I know there was the rectangle one. That was the Rise of Skywalker. I think maybe that was the one I'm thinking of. Is the Rise of Skywalker that has the rectangular shaped. I can't remember. I know I probably have them both because when I won that Star Wars contest from Bandai, the mono competition, they were supposed to send me to Star Wars Celebration in California but it was right when COVID hit, so everything got canceled. The next year it got canceled, so I ended up going like two years, and I was constantly talking to the guy that pretty much puts on all the Bandai competitions now, and he finally said, "Well, we can send you to Star Wars Celebration." That was still a go, but Star Wars Celebration is 3 days, but we're only paying for like 2 days of hotel, or it was just like, it was almost more of a hassle at that point. I was just like, or he goes, or we can just give you a prize package based on the value of the prize. You know, we'll send you a bunch of models based on the value of the whole celebration, the Star Wars Celebration prize, the airline tickets and hotel and all that stuff. By that time, I was over it. You know, it was a couple of years had passed, and it was just one delay after another. And I finally just said, "Yeah, just send me the kits." So, man, did I get a lot of model kits from them. Oh my God. I got another one. I actually built one as a commission a few years ago, and that was a perfect grade Millennium Falcon. I had another one. Actually, did they give me? Because I had two of them, and I ended up giving one to a friend of mine, because I got the second one I got from them was the one that had all the lights, or all the the lighting kit and everything like that. They had two versions of it. One was just the standard that didn't have a lighting kit, and then the other one had all the photo etch and everything. And that's the one they gave me in this prize package. It was a perfect grade that had everything in it. So that was cool. But then they gave me a ton of models. I mean, they must, I can't even remember how many it was. It was like 40 some models. Now, granted, some of them were just those little tiny kits, the little small, 1/4 scale, like TIE fighters and little things like that. So it was all cool stuff, but it was a lot. I was just like, oh my God. So I ended up giving away one of the perfect grade Falcons I had, because I didn't need two. And kept the other one, but I've got a couple of B-Wings, a couple of 6 scale stormtrooper, or 1 6 scale shadow trooper. I think I got a K2SO, bunch of kits. It was crazy. After I'm done with the paint, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it, because I don't do weathering. Oh, you're talking about the Falcon? Well, the big thing, I don't know, maybe you can use this as an experiment, and try some weathering out, be an idea. So that's pretty much good there. Go with that, and then I'm going to grab other side here, let that one dry. Maybe this will be an experiment for you. I think the biggest thing, and even I struggled with it, was it's really easy to over weather those the big exhaust fans along the back. The engine panel on the back of the Falcon. You get those 6 round panels, and the first time I did, I used some of this weathering powder, and I used the soot, and it was just too dark. It was ridiculously dark, and it looked bad. And I have a lot of reference photos that I used from the 3-foot Falcon that they have, the actual Lucasfilm one. So I had a lot of those photos to reference when I was weathering it, but it was just too much. So I had to go back and repaint the engine deck back there, because on the PG, the engine deck is actually a separate piece. It's like one big giant triangular like type of piece that comes off. So fortunately, it wasn't too difficult to redo it, but I had to tone it down quite a bit. So I went back and really just kind of hand painted over some of those the pigment, because the pigment it's not going to come off. Stuff was on there, and it was, I didn't use fixer, but it was just, it's so potent and it's so dark. There was no way to get it off. Even I tried brushing it off with the actual brush I'm using now, and it just wouldn't lighten up enough. It was bad. So I ended up almost did that right in the pigment. Don't want to do that. So I was able to go back over it and tone it down, and I recovered it. But it was definitely lesson learned, definitely, with using these dry pigments. So you get carried away, especially with a dark color. So something to think about. But I think it would be a good learning experience for you if you want to try it. It's really, you don't have to necessarily weather it so much with, streaking and stuff like that, but you can at least like do the chipping effects with the paint, because I'm not sure if those come. I know the PG comes with decals of everything, but I ended up painting all those panels. I didn't want to decal them. They have a lot of chipping, that in the decals. If you don't really want to paint everything, but I ended up doing the chipping by hand, and I just painted those panels one at a time. The ones that were colored, the body of the Falcon is pretty much just a really light gray, but then you've got some wine, almost like a wine colored panel, and then there's some yellowish tan. There was a lot of different sub panels, which in retrospect, I should have done first. It would have been easier to mask a lot of those smaller areas off and then just paint all the gray. Instead, I did the gray first and then had to mask off this massive area just so I could paint a small red panel. Giovanni says, let's see what's going on here. It says I might use the Falcon as a test weathering and lighting the cockpit of a couple Star Trek kits, and those I've seen people do a lot of LEDs on them. Yeah. Well, one of the things I did when I built the last Falcon I built was the version, the Lando version from the movie Solo. So you had the escape pod and everything like that was part of it. I'm just going to go back to this so we can kind of see what's going on the bench here. So here's an idea what this looks like before and after. So you can see the color difference from just the paint to the pigment quite a bit. Now it is, again, it is quite a bit brighter on camera. It's not it's a little bit more toned down in person, but we're still waiting for a lot of this to dry. You can still kind of see that sheen to everything because it's still not totally dry, but I can go back over it too with some of the darker stuff. But anyway, the Falcon I built had that. And then I also found a photo etch set for, I think it was the Rise of Skywalker, the version that you're building. It was a photo etch set for it. So it had the gunner seats or the gunner hallways in the top and the bottom of the Falcon. Those ones that are, even the windows were also photo etch on the top and the bottom where those cannons are on the Falcon. And so I actually put LEDs behind it because the photo etch came with, they were cut with little tiny lights. So all you had to do was backlight them. And so if you could get down close enough to the damn thing and look down in those little hallways where those two gunner seats were, you could see the lighting and stuff from behind, excuse me, from behind the, where I had backlit those. I had to put like one or two on each side. So it just kind of lit up the whole thing around in a circle. Because if you're familiar with those hallways of the, where those gunner seats are, they're kind of a octagon shape, I guess, and more like a and tapered, and they're narrower at the bottom and they get wider as they go toward the glass. So, but it was kind of fun, difficult, but fun to glue all that photo etch together and then backlight them. I also had a photo etch, the back panel of the cockpit was also photo etched. So, but that was kind of cool. And then I added some fiber optics to it and put the running lights and all that stuff in it. But yeah, Star Trek kits. Yeah, I haven't done any Star Trek kits in years. And George is going to probably roll over and never talk to me again after he hears that, because when we were kids, we built a Starship Enterprise. I don't even remember what the brand of the model kit was. It was probably MPC or some garbage. But when we used to, back in the days when you had to use glue that was in a tube, it was a tube of this thick glue, tester's crap or whatever it was, and really highly flammable crap. But as kids, we'd screw around with it. When we get bored with something, we just put glue on our models and light them on fire and burn them to the ground. So yeah, I burned a Starship Enterprise to the ground once. Yeah, not proud of it, but hey, it happened. And one day we went to used to buy fireworks in Mexico, and we brought back some stuff. We brought back an M80, which is basically kind of like a quarter stick or an eighth stick of dynamite, and pretty powerful stuff. We had an old one. I can't remember what scale it was, but it was so big. It was probably a 1/35th scale or something like that. But it was an F4 Phantom jet. We shoved an M80 up the tailpipe, put that in the front yard, and blew it up. I can tell you, we found parts on the other side of the house. That was amazing. Okay, so kind of get an idea. I'm going to zoom back in here, and we'll show you these tow cables. Where's my mouse? There it is. Come on. There we go. Close up again. So you remember I added some chipping along this area here where the cable rests. I'm also going to tack it down right where it falls beside these two brackets, and then it goes up here to the front and attaches right here. So I still need to kind of push that in and get it nice and tight. But if we look at the other side, see if I can get this one to fall into place as well without too much of a headache. It's a little tab that sticks off this thing, so it's kind of fits in there a little bit snug, but there. So this will go right in that hole back there, and then the same thing. I'm going to take this cable and just tuck it down, and I'll tack them in there. So that's the way the cables will sit. Once everything's dry and I'm satisfied with the pigment underneath the cables, I'll go and put some of the dust on these and get them nice and dirty, because like I said, they're just a little too dark. They're straight black right now, but I'll dust them up a little bit with the pigment, and then it should look great. But then I can fully tack these down and get them in place, and then that will be the end of that. We'll leave those right there. So far, so good, though. I still got, I got to do this hatch, too. I just realized I haven't decided. I haven't glued this down because I can't decide if I'm going to have it open or not. I'm not sure if I'm going to have the driver in there or not. So that's why I've left that alone. If I do have the driver in there, that's just where you just reverse this, turn it around, and it faces that direction. So you got the little driver's head sticking out. But I'm not sure. I may just have him standing alongside it. Because if you do, you got to cut his torso. You don't use his legs. You just stick his torso in there. It's supposed to sit on this little bracket that's in there. It's kind of janky. I don't know why they did it that way. They could have easily had just a flat surface there, but that's where we're at so far. And we've still got our little mascot, the 1/4 scale from the UC hard graph Ground War set. I don't know if it's EC hard ground, but it's a Ground War set that has that. It has 2 of those little tanks in there, and those are awesome. If you get the Gundam Ground War set, is the Gundam Ground War set, or is it? No, it's the Gundam. It's not a Gundam set that comes with 2 of the hover tanks as well. So it's kind of cool. All right, I'm going to clean my brushes. We're getting down here on time. So I'm just going to run this through. This is just straight lacquer thinner. That won't get any of that pigment out, any of that fixer out of it. I'm not sure what the fixture will do if it dries in there. It may just turn my brush into a hard, useless brush. And this, of course, just has pigment, so I'm not worried about that. Keep those out. All right. Wow, we got a lot of people watching. Anybody else want to say hi before I close this out? I can call you out in the chat here, and we'll go down the list. So first we had, before, this was like 1 minute before we showed up tonight, it was Nick, first one in, Julius, and then Old School jumped in. Mr. George, Old School Gunplay jumped in. It's right after that. Giovanni right after him, and Angel right after him. Let's see. I don't think there was anybody. Oh, we did have one other. That was Rory. Rory Holler, Turtle RC Racing. Good to have you as well. But then it was just a bunch of old guys talking to old guys, I guess. Anyway, let me go back to this view here. So we're going to keep plugging away on the weathering here. We're getting close. Like I said, I'll once I'm satisfied with the pigments and stuff that are on the top of this, I'll set the cables in place, dust them up a little bit so they're not so black, so stark black. Then I still have to do the turret. This will go a little bit quicker, but it'll just be basically just a little bit back here in the basket, but mostly just the top. There's some little areas there that I can dust up and do that. I got the sides done, and then we'll start the wheels and tracks. That's probably the next big thing, because I got to I cut out a little bit of a notch here on the side so I can get this first gear on. Where I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to glue this down before I put the tracks on. So I cut out a little piece so I can get that gear on and still not get in the way of this side skirt. It'll actually cover that up nicely, so it's not a big deal. But I'll put the tracks on, get those in place, and then start weathering those as well. So that's where we're at, boys and girls. All right. Anyway, we're just about done here. It's 7:25. Got about 5 more minutes. Anything else anybody want to add or ask, or anyone want to just say hi? Throw your name in the chat. Jason, how you doing? Late join. Well, good to have you nonetheless. Thanks for joining in, Jason. Mr. Davenport from the lovely state of Oregon. He and I used to work together in California, years ago. That's all right, but it's official. Well, not official yet, but I talked to my realtor today. We're trying to see where we're at. We may end up selling this place, so we'll see. Still real early to figure all that out. But you see all that? That was just from stuff on just a little bit of extra dry pigment here. The stuff gets everywhere, so just be prepared whenever you use this kind of stuff. Anyway, just getting wrapped up here. Just putting some dry pigments on the top of this, and then fixing them down with some pigment fixer. I'm going to go back over with a little bit different color, a little bit darker color, maybe some more dry pigment just to highlight some of those dirty, grimy areas, dust up those cables, fix them in place. We'll glue them down, and then it'll be time to turn the whole thing over and start working on the tracks. We're going to use track wash first, which is just a liquid AK product here. Maybe, Julius, maybe. Like I said, too early to say, but we might be relocating. We'll see. This is track wash. It's a kind of a brownish, dark brown kind of color. Good for a good start when you're weathering tracks. And we'll put this on first, and then I'll go back over with some of those pigments. You can even use this while it's wet as a pigment fixer if you wanted to. Just put some dry pigments on. And then I'll clean up the actual rubber pads in the tracks so it'll give us some contrast and it won't be just one solid color. Yeah, Julius, we've been talking about it. I've talked about it for a couple of weeks on the live stream, just kind of like, with all the ridiculous taxes and things that are being passed in this state. It's just making it ridiculously hard to keep staying here. And believe me, I do not want to move again, but we might. We just might. We shall see. We shall see. So anyway, let's go back up here to anybody else want to say hi while we're going? Let's see, look at my mug. All right. That was a good one. We got a lot done tonight. Thanks for joining in, everybody. I appreciate each and every one of you and everybody that supports this channel. Again, Facebook is just deleting my videos. That's their new video storage policy. So anything 30 days or older gets kicked. So if you want to see anything, it's still going to be here on YouTube. Just support the YouTube channel. In fact, tell all your friends about it and keep plugging away, because it would be nice to be able to keep this channel going, growing, I should say, at the pace that it's growing. It's got a long way to go to catch up to the Facebook page, but as fewer and fewer videos are available to watch there, everybody's going to have to come over here anyway, so might as well. So anyway, thank you. Good night, everybody. Giovanni says good night. Good night to everyone. I appreciate it. Again, thank you so much. Like and subscribe. Put a comment in the comment. It helps the algorithm out. You guys know how it works, especially with YouTube. So anyway, we shall see you next week. Don't think there's going to be any reason why I won't be here next week. So anyway, one more time, again, thank you so much.